you there.
Hi, Kate.
Hi. Right, it's on live now.
Oh, good.
So we can hear you, but
Yeah.
what I want to do is well, I suppose I don't need to record it because I can just put the recording up to YouTube later, can I? All right, I don't think I need to do that. I can just let it go up on the live there. And right, I've just put, and then so nobody can see you, but I can see you, and you can see me. And all we're going to be doing today is just have a chat about what's going on and see where it takes us, aren't we? That's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, sounds good.
And just a moment, because I just want to see if it's on myself. Right, there you go. Okay, and I can see if people make comments. All right, so we've got some people in, and we'll wait for a little bit. So you don't need to tell me your name or anything, but maybe you can just tell me a little bit about what you're interested in and why you've come on for this chat today. I mean, you don't need to tell your name or anything.
Well, I've hi. I don't mind. My name's Diane, so I've come on for just basically. I feel that there's a lot of confusion with the freedom fighters. You know, they've got the good intention, for knowing that something's not quite right in the world, but they are being led astray. And I want to also get some clarity around, this common law thing, natural law. Does it come under the 1688, that Bill of Rights sort of thing? That's where I'm sort of wanting to get a little bit more clarification too.
Right. Well, so I'm just going to, I have really wanted to talk about this because there's a lot of confusion about the common law, and because everybody's saying in the pre-natural time, that they didn't need to have any laws, and everybody just lived free, and they paint this beautiful picture for everybody. You've only got to look at the Vikings on the Netflix to know that everybody wasn't living peacefully. People were planting their gardens. And then bigger people were coming along and destroying their gardens, killing them all, and taking the land that they had cultivated. That's what they were doing. And so it wasn't as all peaceful. And the original political parties were the religions, weren't they?
Yes, the religions.
And I'm going to say something really weird, and people are going to say I'm a bit mad, but today I'd really like to tell my new understanding to what I think is the Adam and Eve story. Eve ate the apple. Now, in the Germanic tribes and the Anglo-Saxon tribes, this was pre the Bible being translated into other languages. It was in a language that nobody could read. The only ones that could read it were the religions that had created the Bibles. Well, pre-Bible, nobody could read, and nothing was written down. And so usually when they wanted to remember ancestries, it was only done over maybe 3 generations, and then you forgot about your history and you carried on in your natural way. And then I just recently was looking at the 1688 Bill of Rights, and it uses the word posterities. When I went to the word posterities, then I found the word progeny. And I wanted to know what the word progeny meant. And the word progeny came from plants, animals, and person. And so I was thinking about this, and what I'm thinking about our New Zealand natives, what happened to the Australian Aboriginals, what happened to the American Indians, and what happened to the Canadian Inuits. but specifically what happened to our New Zealand Maori. And that has helped me a lot, because what had happened with them was that they couldn't read and they didn't have a language. And since they couldn't read and they didn't have a language, land deeds couldn't be created and laws couldn't be created. And as long as land deeds couldn't be created, nobody could buy their land. So when they what they did, the missionaries, when they came to New Zealand, what they did is they scooped up a few Maoris and they raised them inside their missionary homes. And not only that, they took some missionaries over to England to learn how to read and write. And they gave them a language. And that is Eve biting the apple. That's biting the apple right there. Because as soon as they bit the apple, which is the apple, as soon as they bit it, they then had knowledge of text, written text. And the minute they had knowledge of written text, the missionaries proceeded to draw up hundreds of land deeds in New Zealand, and they wrote the Declaration of New Zealand Independence, called the Whakaputanga. They wrote that, and they bought up the entire country, and the natives were left landless. That is exactly what happened. Now, everybody thinks that this just happened to the natives, but it actually happened first with the Germanic tribes and the Anglo-Saxons. Oh, we've got a funny sound now. And the is it gone? All right. The Anglo-Saxons in England, and now I'm a little bit weak on my history over there. This is why we need some English people to come in, because I'm weak on all of that history. But to my limited knowledge, the same thing happened. The Bible was not in a written language, and people were just progenies. They just were born to the earth. They ate of the earth. They ate the animals, and then they died and went back to the earth. And this is God's creation. Because who is the creator? God is creator. Who creates? We do. And so that got me to thinking that even though we are not God, but in a sense we are all gods, because we all create in that way, in the way that God intended us to do, right? And that God said, don't eat the apple. And when they translated the Bible into Germanic, and I think even into the Latin, when they did that, it created text. And then as soon as they were able to, whenever they write laws, the laws have to be written in the language of the country. And if you have no written language, then you have no written laws. And if you have no written laws, then they could not force upon you international laws or church laws or any laws, because you didn't know God through the text. And so, now where was I going with this? So when they got the text going, or...
So it had already happened with the Germanic tribes and the Anglo tribes in England. So, as you said, it was in the past.
And they were naked in the jungle. They were naked in the jungle of man-made laws, because God just said, you just get born, you eat, you take care of your babies, and you go back to the earth, right?
Yes.
And that's all God said that you needed to do to be truly, deeply godly. That's what the animals do. If you go in the jungle, that's what the animals do, right? But the minute that you had that language, you were then naked in the jungle of the religious laws. And then they had the Catholics, the Jewish and the Islamic churches, and they had all written laws. But they also had laws amongst themselves that they were not allowed to force those laws on the people of whatever country, because those people didn't have a written language. So this is why the missionaries, the first thing they do is teach the people a written language. Soon as they have a written language, they're then naked in the jungle of man-made laws. And then they buy up all their lands. So then they created this Magna Carta. The religious leaders, the kings, started to fight amongst each other. And with the church, because the kings started to say, well, we just want to be kings by ourselves and we don't want the religion. And there's everybody knows what happened there.
Yeah.
But they wrote the Magna. Now, a lot of people are telling you to go back to pre-Magna Carta. But if you go back to pre-Magna Carta, all of the religions ruled, didn't they?
Yeah.
And everybody else was slaves. And
so we don't want to go back to that time. That's what I try to tell everyone. You don't want to be going back to there because we've already come out of slavery. We've got that in the 1688 Bill of Rights that gives us that protection.
Well, that's exactly right. And then they wrote the Magna Carta, and the Magna Carta, of course, if you go and read it, there's always a preamble. You've only got to read the preamble. And the preamble clearly says that it's for the bishops and the kings and the barons. And it said that they will have courts and they will be judged by their peers. But it wasn't us, because we still at that time, the Anglo-Saxons still at that time had no written language. So they couldn't follow these laws because they were godly people. They were just one with the earth and one with the God. And so they used to appoint religious leaders or dukes or kings to take care of the settlements of the godly people who were all children. They were considered, because they didn't have a written language. And if they didn't have a written language, it meant that they had not bitten the apple yet. And since they didn't bite the apple, then they could not be bound to all these religious laws, including the Magna Carta. And so when they got their language, suddenly they were naked in the jungle of man-made laws that were all written into the Bible, and they had no defense because they had no written laws of their own. All they had was a language with all the laws of the invaders, so which was not good for them. And of course the invaders wrote the laws to suit themselves. Well, then they fought for 400 years. That is when the 1688 came to power, right? Now, here's where we needed an American. During that time, there were the religious organizations of the Quakers. Now, everybody's saying to me that the Jehovah's Witness and the Latter-day Saints, they're all saying to me that they didn't begin until the late 1830s, or even into the 1900s, quite late. But actually, the Quakers, the Mormon Church and the Jehovah's Church are break-offs of the Quakers. When they wrote the Magna Carta, some religious leaders, when they wrote the 1688, some religious leaders said that this was a good thing, but a lot of them said, no, we don't want to have that. We want to continue to hold our absolute power. And so those ones were all, a lot of those in the Roman Catholics and all of those were all kicked out of England, right? And where did they go? They went out into the world, into the Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all of those countries. And the first thing they did was gave them a written language. And then those people were naked in the jungle, just like our Anglo-Saxons were. So it just went around. And so then the Majesty wrote, that's when all the birth certificate came in. Now, I'm going to get to this common law. I'm very suspicious. In the around about 1789, the Americans had broken off and they had decided they didn't want to be a part. Now, that was a corporation. When the 1688 was created, it was called the Law of the Seas. The Magna Carta was called the Law of the Land, and the 1688 was called the Law of the Seas. And that was to go out into all the world to protect all the world's people from all of the things that had happened to the Germanic tribes and the European tribes and the Anglo-Saxon. To stop all of that, they sent out ships to all of the world to stop all of this from continuing to happen. It did kind of fail, but it was going to happen. And so 54 countries went under the Majesty. Several countries went under the Catholic Church, you have to separate the church from the Catholic, because the Catholics were saying that they're not the same thing. The church and the actual high up, I guess you could almost call them the kings of the church, are different from the actual on-the-ground churches. So on-the-ground churches have their own little governments that are not ruled by the kingly church, so to speak. But the kingly church has certain laws that they have to work within. So they're all called instruments. And some countries, because the Majesty, her rule was that the country had to stop their slavery in order to sign up with her, because they had the 1688 right, and that forbid all of the raping, pillaging, whipping, torture, slavery, all of that was forbidden in there. And if you read the 1688, it is a bill to the government, and it tells the government what they have to do in order to govern us. And if they don't govern us according to what they say, what we say, because it's a bill, then it also tells us how to remove the monarch. It actually tells us how to remove the monarch. And if we have a problem with government, how to remove the government. And if we have a problem with courts, how to remove the courts. No other document will give you that. There's not a king in this world that has got a document that tells you how to remove them if they don't treat you well. She's the only one. So that is why Her Majesty got 54 countries, and the other ones only got a few countries. That is why. And yeah, and so now where am I going with this? Help me a little bit.
We're going to common law.
Right, we're going to common law. So that is the common law right there. Pre that 1688, you had no common law. You had slavery and masters. And the world, the world is based on nature. And if you look in the jungle, all of the large communities of animals have a king. And that's what it says. It says in the prayer, it says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So we should have a kingdom, just like it's called the animal kingdom. So you have kings, and if you look at the monarch, look at the monarch butterfly, what does it do? It migrates around the world, and that's what she's done. And then you look at the Protestants, which is the protest ants. If you look in an ant colony, because we're a colony, you look in the ant. Well, if you have an ant colony, and if you have a colony with protest ants, when their queen does badly to them, eats them and beats them up, and that, they all get together and remove the queen ant. The bees do the same, don't they? They remove, when the hive gets too big, they remove themselves and they create a new queen and they branch out. That's how it all goes. And that's the natural law. So when we have our parliament, right? And we have our parliament that we voted in, and then they create a law called the Act. The 1688 is not an act. It's above man-made laws. And then they have the Act, and when the Act is signed, it ascends to the Governor-General, who is in place of the Majesty, and we ascend to heaven because we are godly. We are God, and because we are the progeny, right? Because what does progeny mean? Means you came from the animals, the plants, and the person. And it doesn't only mean that, it means through to the present generation, from the first progeny to the present generation are connected in this word, right? And so that's why the 1688 Bill of Rights uses the word posteries, yeah, got you. So then we ascend to the Majesty. Now, these laws are extremely well checked, because if the Majesty and the Parliament have made a mistake, we are entitled to a remedy. And the remedy is that we can throw them out. So they're so careful. Because
it's hard now, isn't it?
Eh?
It's a bit hard.
No, it isn't, because nobody has been to the court. Now God said, because previously to that, now you look at all these common law courts that they're having, right? God said that, who is God? We are God. God said that there will not be, there will be no more hidden courtrooms. God said we will build a public area, and everybody that wants to go, and that's why we have a public area in the court, and anybody can go and sit there at any time that they want, and they can't ask you to leave unless you're disturbing. But they didn't have that previously. Previously, they had closed courts. If they spoke against the church, then they would go to a closed court hearing, and then they would get tortured. According to, and the punishment now, the Mormon Church continues to have this today. The Mormon Church and the Jewish church, Jewish religion as well. When their people do something wrong, they don't go to our common law courts. They go to their own courts, and their leaders dish out the punishment to them. That is true. And so they're not in our court. Not everybody can be in our court. Islamists are not in our court. Islamists, Jewish people, a lot of the Catholic people, but then God said we're going to have common law courts and everybody's going to come in there. So this court that you have is your common law court. And they've got the criminal section, and they've got the high court, which is the constitutional section. And if you're angry with your parliament, you send it, you bypass, which is what they're doing, you bypass the civil court, and you go directly to the high, you go directly to the high court, you ascend to God, because it's from Almighty God, who is God. We are of God.
Yeah.
And then you tell the judge what the parliament's doing that's upset you, and the judge will check your 1688 Bill of Rights, and he will say, yes, they've done this wrong, and he will make an order in the liberties to be allowed. Now, the common law court people are lying to you, because this is what, hang on, I'll just put it up because I don't want to make a mistake here. So other people, if you're at home, you can put up, you can just Google don't even Google it if you're from the UK or from Australia, because they don't even put it on the website. You can't even fish through theirs. They've hidden it. But New Zealand has put it up for us. So it's the 1688 Bill of Rights, New Zealand legislation. You can click on that. And then if you click on View Whole, we're not going to do it all today because there's a lot in here, but I'm just going to tell you that you can go to, make sure I don't turn off. All right, you can go to liberties to be allowed. It says there, subjects liberties to be allowed. Are you on there?
I can't, I haven't got my laptop, but...
Oh, you don't need it. I will just tell it to you. It's all right, I'll just tell it to you.
I have actually looked at that document and gone through it, so I'm just sort of, trying to, like study it and get my head around it, and, certain bits, because sometimes the language is a little bit, it's foreign in some of the words that they use, and it's trying to sort of understand and make sense of that.
And a lot of the words you have to go back to the original Latin text. And so some of the words that look like one word, I only know this because I teach and I was teaching about it, but I'm not a university linguist or anything like that. I was just teaching my high school kids, and it popped up about the Latin language and the prefixes and the suffixes and all, and how they join them together for the English language and all of that. And so sometimes you have to separate words and then go and divide them up, sometimes even into 3 words, and go and research what they mean according to this and not according to the language that it is today. So, but the liberties to be allowed is very important, because it is at this point that the judge, you go to the judge and you'll say to the judge, the Parliament is upsetting my rights that were promised to me, and that they are only permitted to govern. See, they're only permitted to govern if they hold up these rights. And then the judge will say his ruling that they have made a mistake in which right that they've violated, right? And he will give the order for the parliamentarians to stand down. And the police, it says, I will give the declaration, and all officers and all ministers whatsoever shall serve their majesties. We are the majesty. So the majesty, because then you have to go and research the word majesty, and it doesn't mean what you think. Majesty means sovereign. And each one of us are one sovereign that you know from your common law, right? Each one of us is an individual sovereign. And we took all our sovereigns and we put it in the basket of the queen. She was only queen. But when we all gave our sovereigns to her, she became Majesty the Queen. And the majesty is her holding all of us up above the man-made laws, since we ate the apple. We ate the apple and we were naked in the jungle of man-made laws. So they gave us the natural law, because being able to read, when they wrote the Magna Carta, nobody could read it. So nobody had to follow it, because if you can't read it, then you can't follow it, right? Because you are ignorant. You are pure in the eyes of God. The minute that you bit the apple and were able to read, then you knew what their laws were. They were written on paper and you had to follow them. And at that time, they could punish you. So the ones that couldn't read were called the village idiots, because they were not under any of these laws, because they couldn't read. So that was a good thing for them. So they were still godly. But they used to get beaten up quite a bit anyway. But the majesty, which is us, who rests in the basket of the queen, who becomes the majesty the queen, that's what they call the crown. And then he says that all officers and all ministers whatsoever shall serve their majesties and their successors for the same for all times to come. This is the declaration that you need from the correct common law court, not from your back room, courtyard, whatever it is that they're setting up. They're going and knocking on the Governor General's house and saying, here's my declaration that I wrote myself and you have to leave. Well, she doesn't have to leave because why? Because they're all voted in by the sovereigns. We're the sovereigns, and so we voted them in, and if we want to get them, anybody wants to get them out, knocking on their door ain't going to do it. You've got to go through the court, right? And so you have to be able to use this to do that. The judge will give you a declaration. And the New Zealand Maori in 1865, everybody knows this, they went to the court. Now, I want to go back to America. Got to go back to America. Now, in 1789, around about there, you have to ask the Americans, but they split from the king. And they said, we don't want to be part of your corporation. We want to continue. They wanted to be free. Don't you see that the ordinary people were not free? Only they were free and nobody else was. And they didn't want to, they believed that the peasants or the ordinary people, which we were called ordinary people, they believed that the ordinary people had no right to put these restrictions on them. They believe that they should be able to make any laws that they want at any time that they want, because they still believe that the ordinary people were the village idiots, even if they could read. And so they split from the Majesty. Now, this battle went out into the world, and it's been going on ever since. It's been going on for hundreds of years. Now, in 1830, the missionaries were in New Zealand abusing. I'm not going to go too much because I want to get to our court case. But
Yes.
America, what did America do? America threw the British out because the British want the natives first to have a written language before she will go in and set up a government. Because the only reason why they can't do that is because if they can't read in English, then they can't have the 1688 rights that they will be governed under protections of no cruel and unusual punishment. So the English preferred to teach the chiefs English first, which then they bite the apple, right? It's kind of a catch-22 situation. If they don't bite the apple, they're going to be slaughtered by the barbarous religions. And if they do bite the apple, they then are naked in the jungle, out of God's law and into man-made laws. Yeah.
Mm.
So it's really is quite the dilemma here. I think they did the best with what they caught. And then while England was trying to get a treaty with the American Indians, they were also trying to get a treaty with the New Zealand Maori. For some reason, they didn't do a treaty with the Aboriginals of Australia. But I think the Catholic originally took over Australia, and there was a battle going on there as well. So I can't really speak for the Aboriginals because I don't really know what happened. But the Americans wrote the Declaration of Independence, America. And in that, the first, you can go and read the preamble. It's right there, it's staring right in your face. It says there, unalienable rights. What does unalien? Well, the British that were there negotiating with the Indians, it says it right there. We're angry with the British because they will not let us set up a governance in this country, even though we've been here a long time. And the Queen said, you're not setting up a governance until we put these protections in place for them. And she couldn't put the protections in place until they could read and know what they were signing. So Britain was waiting for the treaty, right? And in the meantime, all those Jehovah's and all those religious people got peed off waiting. And so they said, we're going to set up a government with or without you. And then the big fight started, didn't they? And the first thing they had to write was the unalienable rights to get the British out. And then they changed it, and they changed it to inalienable rights. So inalienable rights, that they allowed themselves to have rights in the country of owned by the Indians, and they would have had no rights because they were all under British rights. And so since they had no British rights because they had thrown out the British, they then wrote themselves inalienable rights so that they could have rights, but they didn't write any rights for the American Indians. So, so the American Indians for all these hundreds of years have had no rights. But the New Zealand Maori were different because the New Zealand Maori, those same missionaries were in New Zealand molesting all the children, and those same people were doing the same thing, the Americans as well, but the 500 chiefs got together, and the Queen, by that time, they could read quite well, and the Queen said to them, we're going to make this treaty and put you under these protections. And as long as you stay under these, they said, it's like this. What did God say? God said, once the apple is bitten, you can't ever go back. You just can't. And so they did the next best thing. They gave us a written set of laws to protect us against all those religious laws that they had written. Thousands of Islamic laws, thousands of Jewish laws, thousands of Catholic laws that we have not even had translated, that we don't even know what they are. There's decapitation, there's bloodletting, there's pulling out your innards and all the tortures that you're supposed to get for speaking against them. All of that is in those laws, are all hidden. So we got the next best thing was a written law, right? So the New Zealand Maori got that too. Now, I'm getting so they're subjects, but I'm getting suspicious because now I know there were British birth certificates and American birth certificates, and they ain't the same. And the Americans are telling all of us to leave our birth certificates that are protected under these God's rights. And they're telling us to go under their inalienable rights from the United Nations.
That's from the common law, isn't it?
It is. So I think it's a huge deception.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they have brought in LexisNexis American law into New Zealand, instituted in 2020. And all these common law courts, I think that all the common law courts, that they were the International Natural Justice Tribunal and the Sacha Stone courts, and that the New Zealand Doctors SOS courts, and the New Zealand Teachers SOS. I think that they have been testing all of their thousands of Indigenous laws through those courts, and they are presently putting them into our proper common law courts, and they are removing us from God's law. They removed us once when they got us to bite the apple, and now they're going to remove us again when we got the next best thing that they could to put us next to God, and they're removing us again. And it does get a bit complicated. Now, let's get to the court case of the, let's get to the court case of 25th of February, where they made the ruling of the, I better put my laws up here to make sure I've got it up. So if anybody's at home and you want to follow the laws that I'm telling you about, you can just Google in 1990. Now, I'll just say this, doesn't matter if you're in Australia, doesn't matter if you're in England or Scotland, you still, what they're doing in New Zealand is what they're doing in your country. So you can still follow me and we can get the Commonwealth together. Now you can Google in there 1990 New Zealand Bill of Rights, which is different from 1688. So 1990 New Zealand Bill of Rights. So we'll give everyone at home a couple of minutes to type it in. So you just type in 1990 New Zealand Bill of Rights. So you can just type that on in there. I'm not going to go over everything today because it takes about 3 days of training. So it does take me a very long time. I've done some one-on-ones, but I'm hoping if anyone wants to come in and do a group, I'm going to start doing groups. I'm going to ask for donations if I do a group. And if you have, you can put, and if you don't have, you don't need to put. But you can watch this and follow me on this for free. And I'm going to give you as much as I can. But actually going over it completely piece by piece takes a few days of full-on sessions. So they're hard. But I have done it with a couple of people. So if you put in New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990, now what you'll see with the 1688 Bill of Rights is that it doesn't say Act. You go and look, it just says Bill of Rights 1688. That's what it says. And if you look on there, it doesn't even say, oh, it says New Zealand up above, but not in the actual writing. It's got the New Zealand stamp, but it doesn't actually say New Zealand on the text. It simply says Bill of Rights 1688. But if you look on your New Zealand one, it says New Zealand, it says in big letters, New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. So it's an act. That's the warning right there. Now, I'm not going to go into too much of this because it will just takes a long video and people can't stay on the video, but we want to talk about the court case today. So I'm only going to tell you a couple of things. I'm going to tell you about, it says their application. And if you click, everyone at home, if you click application, it tells you. You can click view whole. If you click view whole first, it's up the top there, it says view whole. If you click view whole, and then you go and click on, you can just go down and you'll see an act. The first words that it says on there is an act or an action. And then it will say, it tells you who this Bill of Rights is for. It isn't for you. It says that this Bill of Rights is to affirm New Zealand's commitment to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. That's who it's for. It ain't for you. It says it there. It says this is who it's for. It is for the commitment to the International Covenant. That's what it's for. And it's also for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It's not a bill to any, and there's no preamble. It doesn't even have a preamble. So the bill is to the New Zealand taxpayer. The 1688 is a bill to them. And the 1990 is a bill to you. So they're really not the same thing. And then it says to you, then go to number 3 that says application. You'll see it there, application. And it tells you who the Bill of Rights applies to. It doesn't say the people of New Zealand. It says this Bill of Rights applies only to acts done. This means that whenever they make a law, well, now you see, here's the sneaky thing. When an act is done, when a subordinate law is made, they always have to, since they are only sitting in Parliament because we put them there, any subordinate laws that they make has to ascend to the Majesty. It's got to ascend. But this one here doesn't ascend to anybody. It ascends to the Human Rights Commission. That's where it ascends to. It doesn't really ascend. So our laws ascend. So when our laws ascend and the Queen signs off on them, if anything of that law hurts us due to their negligence, it is the Majesties that have got to pay the bill, not us taxpayers. So they are very, very careful not to violate any of our rights because they pay, not us. But when any of these 1990 rights are violated, they only just recently said in a court decision that there has to be a remedy. We, the taxpayer, will pay. We pay. So if you think about the millions of refugees that have come into New Zealand, none of this 1990 does not, any of these laws do not ascend to the Majesty, none of them. So these are called fundamental rights. Right to a house, right to a job, right to $10,000, right to do all your religious practices. The Majesty didn't give you any of those rights. She just said you can be born and you will be safe, you're allowed to speak, and nobody's allowed to beat you up. And nobody can take your land. That's all you get. You don't get much. There are only 26 rights. So 26 rights, you're allowed to speak, you're not, they're not allowed to cruelly punish you, but they are allowed to punish, and they have to have a parliament that is voted in by you and a few others. But you don't get rights to houses and all this crap that they're giving you rights to. But in this one you do. But in this one, who does the bill go to? It goes to, it's going to you. So in the other Bill of Rights, the bill goes to the Majesty, the Queen. So that's why hers ascend and these don't. And now what they've got here is it says it only applies to acts done. They've got here a justified limitations. What happens is, if you go to the, I won't tell you to go down, what happens is when any of these rights, like their freedom of religion and their right to have a house and their right to have a job and their right to have social services, when any of those look like they're not being upheld in one of the subordinate laws that are ascended, when any of those are violent, the Human Rights Commission can put in a complaint. And then the justified limitations, the Governor-General and the Executive and the Parliament will look at our ascended rights, and they will look at their fundamental rights that they want to have, and they will say, is it going to hurt these? And if it is not, they will try to adjust it when they can to fit, to give these people their inalienable rights, because they can't be subjects. And if it can't, then the Parliament can override it. Now, what has happened is the Health Act was written all based on this using justified limitations. So justified limitations says that if we can show that we need to have this law because it protects the people of New Zealand, then we can still have it, and it can override human rights, international rights, covenant rights, every right, but they have to show a justifiable reason why they need to do that, right? So, but here it's going to be the problem. So when you go down to, now my court case, I was about to go to court. And, all right, which shall I do first? Right, I'll go to section. Now, everybody scroll, if you're at home, scroll right down to section 28, all the way down. And section 28 says, other rights and freedoms are not affected. Affected is not the same as effected. Effected and affected are not the same. So affected means that, oh, never mind, I'm going to go there. So an existing right or a freedom shall not be held to be abrogated or restricted by reason only that the right or freedom is not included in this Bill of Rights. So what it's saying is, any other rights that you already have, your ancient rights that you already brought with you from England and that you've had for 400 years, those rights are not going to be affected by this 1990. So we created a case against the Health Act on the, we had written it and we sent it to the court on the 22nd of December. And we had said to the court that the 1688 Bill of Rights and our rights to no cruel and unusual punishment were not included in this law. And we had said the Health Act had no power over us because we were all subjects. And do you know why they're making all the Maori get injected? Oh, I can't go into there too much. I know it's right. Never mind that. So that was part of our case. We said you cannot use justified limitations against our 1688 Bill of Rights because that is the highest law, right to the Queen, and you are violating our cruel and unusual punishment and forfeiture of person. Because when they tell you you can't go, you can't leave your house, you're locked up, that's a forfeiture of person without any conviction. And when they tell you that they're allowed to inject you, well, that's a cruel and unusual punishment, isn't it? Forced upon you. So, and when they tell you you're not allowed to speak about such things, well, that's against your free speech. So all of these rights are protected. So we put them in 28, but they've pulled a sneaky. We need people on this. We need people coming. We need them in Australia. Forget the common law crap and get back to your correct ancient. Our rights are called indubitable rights. And indubitable means that they cannot be questioned. Their rights are called fundamental freedoms or fundamental rights, which means that they can be questioned. But our rights are called indubitable, that they can never be questioned in any court of law or in any parliament. So when they have their fundamental freedoms and they say, hey, we want to mutilate the female vagina, right? We can say, well, that's a cruel and unusual punishment and you can't have that, all right? So some of those religious laws can be questioned, but ours can't be because we don't have any of those cruel things in the Protestants because ours is according to the natural law, and that's not natural because God gave us vaginas, right? So he probably doesn't want us to cut and mutilate our vagina. So
Yeah.
our laws come under natural laws, but their religious laws are man-made. They're not in the Bible. None of them are in the Bible. So in the 20th,
So their laws,
eh?
so their laws are what they're infiltrating into the New Zealand 1990 Bill of Rights.
They
to
can't.
cover-
They can't ascend.
Right.
United Nations laws cannot ascend to God,
Mm.
and neither can anybody in America. The American law. We've got an echo there. The American law cannot ascend. Only ours can. And there are some states in America that are Commonwealth states and they can ascend. So they're trying to piggyback theirs onto ours so that they can ascend them, but not quite to the top. They're going to ascend to Parliament and not ascend further, and then ascend through our law because we ascend. There's an echo here. Have you got another thing turned on?
Me, just my computer.
I think you can't have two.
I'll turn it off.
Yeah, it might be better if you turn it off. Is it gone
Yeah.
now? Yes, it's gone now. Okay. That's
Yeah.
what's. Yeah, you can have computer or telephone,
Yeah.
but you can't have both. So if you, I'll just let you absorb that. So, have you got any questions there? I better let you talk a bit.
No, that's okay, because I'll go over it again, which is good, because it's just good to have this discussion with you, and you've covered a few points that I want to know, especially like common law, natural law, and things like that. So that's good. You know how you had a case with a lady just before Christmas. You had a court case that you filed in the court. So I just wanted to see how that, what was the outcome of that, and how did that go?
Yeah. So we filed on the 22nd of December, and one of the questions that we asked, we said, could we please have a declaration to reconfirm that our indubitable rights continue to exist? And the New Zealand native Maori had done that twice in their time, and we were going to be the third time to do that. And then,
Yes.
and then we also, this is quite complicated, so I hope everybody can follow. We also said to them that in regards to the COVID-19 Health Act, we said that in regards to the COVID-19 Health Act, that we were not within that law because we came under Section 28 with our indubitable rights already, and that they would be violating those rights. So we asked for a confirmation that Section 28 did indeed refer to our ancient indubitable rights. And then we sent it, and we paid for it. I paid for it. It was $540.
Wow.
And the court said that I could do the case here from Thailand, and I could do it on the video. So that was, everything was going beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Then we didn't hear, and then on the 6th of January, this court case from the police and the Defence Force got placed in.
Yeah.
Wait till I tell you what they've done. You're going to just go, oh, you're just going to freak out when I tell you what they've done. On the 17th of January, they sent our case back, and they said, you haven't put a little bit of Maori language writing on the front page. Could you please put it in and then send it back? And in the meantime, they were doing this army police case. But not only that, we are battling from all sides. Now, I've got to kind of diverse. So can you make a note and hold that there? And I might forget, so bring me back. But I'm going to diverse and go. Arthur Taylor, a couple of, about it, Chris Farfoy has put in a bill for the Declaration of Inconsistency. Now, our 1688 Bill of Rights, if our indubitable rights are violated, then we go to the High Court and we get the declaration, and the High Court, not some backyard lawyer that doesn't know what they're talking about, the High Court will give you a declaration telling all ministers and all police and all parliament to stand down on that law that they're forcing on you that has violated those indubitable rights, which aren't many. And when Arthur Taylor, so we have that remedy. And then if you look on the 1990 Bill of Rights, make sure I've got the right one, that says that that fundamental right is for the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And section, I can't remember if it's section 2 or section 3, says that there must be a remedy. Now, they had never given remedies in regards to this because our remedy is to the Queen, but there are only 26 rights from the natural law. But their remedy is going to cover thousands of Indigenous rights. I mean, it's just going to, we'll be in the court till the cows freaking come home. And we, the taxpayer, have to pay. So they said it must have a remedy, but they didn't know how to get a remedy. They took the Arthur Taylor case to court. The Human Rights Commission had set up dozens upon dozens of cases trying to get a declaration similar to ours. But if the court ever did get a declaration, they would be entitled to compensation, and it would just open up a hornet's nest. But they always went based on criminal cases. So they lost every time. And finally, they went with Arthur Taylor and 4 prisoners, and they said our voting rights have been violated because they said we couldn't vote. They deliberately changed the law in 2010 to make it so that they couldn't vote. And when they said that they in 2010, they were allowed to vote. And then in 2010, they changed the law so they were not allowed to vote. And then in 2018, a few years later, they sent that case through the court and they said, we were not allowed to vote and you violated our right. And the judge, for the first time ever, gave them a declaration of inconsistency, which meant that it's not the same as our declaration. It really isn't the same. It doesn't tell anybody to stand down. All it does is that will be sent to the Human Rights Commission, and the Human Rights can now take that declaration to Parliament and say, this is from the court, and the court agrees. And then Parliament can then decide if they will give it to them or not. But whereas with our one, when any of our rights are violated, the judge will say, you stand down, and they have to stand down immediately or leave Parliament. So they're very different. So as soon as this, I got knowledge of all of this because I was battling Chris Farfoy, because I had sent a letter to Chris Farfoy to oppose his bill using my Bill of Rights, and he had sent me a letter back to say, and he mentioned the Arthur Taylor case, and then I saw it. And then since the court had sent back my original case, I hope everybody's following me. When the court had sent back my original case, I decided to change it to include this declaration of inconsistency and put in some extra things, which took me a while, because I had to redo the whole thing, because I had thought that the 1990 was a Bill of Rights for all of us, like you. And then I found out that it actually wasn't. It was only a parliamentary Bill of Rights, because I went on to read many, many other cases, and I read I had to read many Otago law reviews, and then they said that if you can think about Clark Kent and Superman, the 1688 is Superman, and this one is 1990 is Clark Kent pretending to be Superman. That's what they called it in the Otago Law Review. They call it the dead hand. They call it the dead hand Bill of Rights. Because
yes, you sent me that.
Yeah, so the dead hand Bill of Rights, and then in another one that I read, it's called the Clark Kent dressed up as Superman. Yeah, that's right. So now where am I?
So going back to where you had to have a, when they said send it back to ask you to put some Mary wording on the top of it.
Yeah, so then I did the Declaration of Inconsistency. I had to put that in there because I had to learn all that. And in the meantime, then they've just passed this case.
With the police.
And wait till I tell you. Now, do you remember I told you about the Section 28?
Yeah, Section 28, yeah.
So Section 28 says that all other rights are unaffected by the 1990 Bill of Rights. And the 1990 Bill of Rights, all United Nations law has to travel through the 1990 to be checked for blockers before we can write any laws considering it. They don't actually get to put any laws into New Zealand. They can only say that law is affecting us, and we can change it if we want to. But they can't actually, all of their laws are actually non-binding in our country until the 25th of February. Look, yes, I'm going to tell you what they've done. I'm going to be the Debbie Downer. Here comes Debbie Downer. Ooh. I think they have read our court case that we put in. They've seen the Section 28. I have never seen it used in a single court case. And I'm going to tell my viewers that if you've got the court case, I don't know how you can get it because I've got it. I think I can post it up. I can. Wait for a minute. Command C, and then I can go to here. I'm going to post this up, and you will see it. So everyone will see. Right, I've posted it on there. So I think it will come up. Does it come up? Yes. So you can click on there, and I want you to go to, I've got it too, so I have to go. I want you to go to section it's gone. Oh, you little snakes.
What?
Wait, because I better check that I'm not wrong. Oh, no, it's all there. All right. Sorry. Thought they'd taken it out, but they haven't. All right, I'll put it on. Hang on. Right, here's a better one. No, here, I put it up. Auntie Dread, a new one. Right, see if that one's there.
I don't know how to click on.
Is that on it? Can you see that coming out?
Well, I can't because I don't know how to do that.
Don't worry, because you can. You have to help me to focus because I get quite lost sometimes. So don't worry about that. Okay. So it's up there. Everyone can click on it. And I want you to go to, I think I'll just post up some of these laws for them so that they can go and look.
That'd be good.
So I'll put this up here now that I see I can do that. Here's the 1990 Bill of Rights if anybody wants to go and have a look. People are always, and here is the 1688. You can click on view whole. I'll just put this up for them so that they can go and have a look if they want to. All right. So is that coming up? All right, there you go. So they're all up there, and then there's the court ruling. So if you click on the court ruling, I'm going to read it to you anyway, so don't worry, dear. So you can go to, am I allowed to say dear?
Yeah.
Nice person. Okay, nice person. I better not say dear.
No, I don't mind.
Okay. We used to be able to call people dear, and it didn't really mean anything. It just meant hey, friend. But nowadays, if you say dear, it has all sorts of meanings that they seem to think. So you have to be careful, don't you? So if you go to 44...
I don't get that, PC.
If you go to... It's all very confusing. Go to 44, and I will read it to you. So Section 28, so we put in our judgment, in our court case, that the 1688 was not included in the 1990. Well, they come back with this. Mr. Hague said, Mr. Hague also relied on the right to work recognised in Article 23(1) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as Article 6 and 8 of the International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights. And here's what he said. As Ms. McCall emphasised, those rights are not found in the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. So therefore, that could be relied on the existence of other rights and freedoms as preserved by S28 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. Now, it's quite hard. I'm going to explain it to you. What it means is that previously, all United Nations law had to go through Section 3 and justified limitations to be checked. And then when we had our ascending law written, Parliament would look at any complaints that they had and decide if they wanted to fix our law or not, and make sure that they would only fix our law if it wasn't going to hurt us. But now they've found S28, and they have said S28 applies to all any existing rights. It can be the American existing rights, all of the international, any right that existed previously to the 1990 is now exempt from justified limitations. So their law has now come into New Zealand, where it was not there before.
Oh my God.
So this is absolutely and the judge turned around and said, I accept the submission that such rights should be recognised in international instruments, can be taken. Now look, all right, if anybody's at home, I want you, so he says, listen carefully, the rights are recognised in international instruments, can be taken to have only indirect relevance, and that they do so through the machinery of New Zealand's domestic legislation, which sets out the principles. So what he said is that the instruments are only taken to have indirect relevance to New Zealand law. Because they are only directly relevant to our law. But however, he has also said that they can use the S28 in regards to all of their rights. So he has still said that they have an indirect relevance, but that is beside the point, because the next judge might not say that. The next judge is going to say they are relevant to New Zealand law, because if the lawyers keep putting these laws through and putting these 1990 through and through, eventually it's going to be law by convention, isn't it?
Right.
So I want everyone to go to the 1688 Bill of Rights that I told you about. Everyone can open it. If you can open double screens, I can, but some people can't. If you can't open double screens, then you're just going to have to listen. But if you can open double screens, then I might as well just do it all today so everybody knows what I'm talking about. Australia, England, Scotland, this is all in all your countries. Then if you go to the 1688 Bill of Rights, one day I'll do it with the pictures up, but I'll just do talking today. If you go down to it's quite hard to find. In the 1688 Bill of Rights, the first section is telling why they removed the king and why they put in the new Prince of Orange, Prince William and Princess Mary, why they put them in. And you have to go to a place, if you go down and you'll see number 1. Can you see number 1?
I'm not on my computer.
Oh, you're not on your, all right, well, the viewers at home.
Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were on there. All right, so if for the viewers at home, if you go down and you see number 1, and then go above that, you will see subjects' rights. And if you go above that, you will see a paragraph and it starts with these words, and whereas the said late king. And if you look there, it will says, we will place His Highness the Prince of Orange. And it says, whom it has pleased Almighty God to make the glorious instrument of delivering this kingdom from popery and arbitrary power. Now, the Majesty is an instrument, and she holds our sovereigns up above man-made laws so that we're not naked in the jungle. Going back to Adam and Eve, when we bit the apple, we were naked in the jungle, and they created these laws so we were not naked. And then the Majesty holds these laws. There's the Majesty. The Majesty holds all these laws above man-made laws. It's when she holds the laws above man-made laws, when our Parliament wants to make a law, it ascends to God. And then God says that's not against any of your natural law and you can have that law. That's why they have it. And if God says, well, that's against your natural law, then you can't have it, can you? And then you go to the court. The judge will tell the ministers and all the Parliament to stand down, won't he? So that's an instrument, but the United Nations is also an instrument. And America is also an instrument. And it just depends which instrument that you're sitting on which rights that you get. But the United Nations is a non-state, and it is a state, and it's not allowed to bring its laws into our countries. And therefore it has no power, because how do they get a remedy? Because it doesn't ascend to anyone to give a remedy. And we don't vote in the United Nations anyway. So they when they create a law, that law is immediately against our 1688. So that the Queen is an instrument, but when you go back to the judge's ruling on section 44, he also said that they had international instruments, right? And international instruments are not supposed to have any power in our country, in our domestic law. They're only supposed to have power internationally when they do their trades with our countries and trades with the birth certificates and all those kinds of trades that they do. That goes all into their law, but that's nothing to do with us little people, because we're just the innocent, godly people on the ground. So we can't be in control of that. And so do you have any questions about the instruments?
No, I kind of understand that. It's like the protection that protects us, and the sovereignty to God's laws, yeah?
Yeah.
So it just, yeah.
So they have to create laws in regards to that. And then that has to sit somewhere, right? Because if you sit that in Parliament, they'll just change it.
Yeah.
So it can't sit in any of the acts. It's got to sit outside on a strong, shall we say, grail. It has to sit on a very strong grail. If it's not sitting on a strong place, it's going to fall down, right? So all our laws can be changed. Even our constitutions can be changed. But this 1688, we are born to it for a start, because it says you are naturally born to this. You don't even have to have it. You are naturally born to it. But unfortunately, all the religious leaders have got laws that are written, and so we need a written law to say we have natural law, but you don't actually, in true, because people are saying that to me, we don't need a written law to have natural laws. No, you don't. But because we bit the apple. Eve bit the apple. When she bit the apple, she was able to read all of their laws that they had written that were not from God. And immediately that she could read them, she then had knowledge. And when you have knowledge of law, then you are able to commit a criminal act, right? Because in law, if you don't have knowledge of that law and you say, if you go to a foreign country and they have a law that you didn't know about, they can't prosecute you because you did not have knowledge of that law, because you couldn't read their language. So therefore you were innocent in God's eyes and you didn't have knowledge, right? So they couldn't give you any punishments. But the minute that you bite the apple and you have knowledge of their written law, and then you have no written law to combat that, then theirs is going to be above your natural law, isn't it? So you're naked. So then you have to get there. Then you have to write a natural law to combat them. And so we wrote no cruel and unusual punishments, free speech, and the right to have a weapon to protect us from them. So now where am I going with this?
Just going back to, when the court case on the 25th of February, what is the impact that it's given now, and where does it leave us for a remedy?
No, we have to, there's more. It gets worse. The last piece, it gets worse. If you go back now, so the judge has recognised international instruments in New Zealand law in a New Zealand court. And let's remember that in this case, they didn't actually use these laws together with S28 as a law that they had taken to court by themselves. It was kind of piggybacked, and they kind of put it in there, and they said, we're thinking about this, but we're not sure. What's the judge going? The judge is saying, yeah, you can have that. And so the next, as it gets used further on, it is going to gain more and more and more power. So
Right, so they've used it as the base.
yes,
to
this
build
is
more.
this is the base, because that's how they
Yes.
do law. It's got to be introduced, and
Mhm.
then you have to get the sovereigns, which are us, to start using it. And then they have to have cases of losing and winning, and then it becomes law. So you can see the road where we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're getting ahead of them now. We're getting ahead of them. So I've got to go to the last bit. You go to the 1990 New Zealand Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
And then go to view whole. Everyone can go to back. Viewers at home, go back to your New Zealand 1990 Bill of Rights. Now, this is in the British Bill of Rights. This is in the Australian. The Americans have pulled a sneaky, and I'll go back to them in a minute. We're on instruments. Remind me to go back to the Americans and their rights. So go down to Section 19. Section 19 is freedom from discrimination. And at this time, they put the Human Rights Act into here. You can see where they're going. I mean, they're just building blocks. This is one more brick, one more brick. You can actually see them building the wall around us. They're actually building a wall that is surrounding us. And they're about to put the roof on. Now, if you click Human Rights Act, so everybody click Human Rights Act. And then, so you click Human Rights Act, and then you click, I want you to click Section 5 at home. So click Section 5. And then scroll down, if you're at home, to KII. It's actually scroll down to, it will be subsection 2. So you go to subsection 2, and it says the functions of the commission. It's got in there the New Zealand Bill of Rights 1990, and they have put the Treaty of Waitangi in there. Now, the Treaty of Waitangi is similar, just like the Anglo-Saxons and the Germanic tribes have got the 1688. All the native people in the Commonwealth are under the Treaty of Waitangi as subjects. And that is supposed to be held up above man-made laws. It should never, never be placed in a law. And when the 1990 Bill of Rights was created, I have written to Justice Benning to ask him, and I'm still on the trail of this. When the 1990 was created, a committee of New Zealand Maori leaders forbid the treaty from going into the 1990 Bill of Rights. 3 years later, they placed it into the Human Rights Act, and they got it into the 1990 through the Human Rights.
Way.
Yeah, fucking sneak. I'm sorry, because I do swear. Everybody knows I swear. So, but so now they've put the treaty in, and I'm going to tell you where they're going. So it's a bit of a long session, so everybody better be in for the long haul, because we still got to keep going. Once I get started on this, I have to finish, and I've been wanting to make this video for a long time. And once I do it, I'm never going to have to do it again, eh?
It's good because we can go through and do a session. I can do it with a group of friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I get annoyed with that because some people were doing that and then they're charging money, you see. So that's what annoys me. Yeah, they did. They've been starting sessions and charging $50 an hour because it is it is all in law and it's public property, and I'm not opposed to that, but I'm just saying, hey, mate, I have worked very hard on this, and for you to go and have sessions with 6 people at $50 an hour and not throw some into my little donation pot that I asked for is a pretty nasty thing to do. But of course, I can't stop you, but God will have his way, and God will get his vengeance, I'm telling you, because
absolutely. I think for us, it's just like, I mean, I'd like to do it with you, obviously, but I'm on a phone at the moment, so it's
no, you cannot. You cannot. But I'm just going to tell everybody, because I there's a long way to go, and I'm going to open up sessions. I'll just announce this to everybody. I'm going to be opening up sessions, and if anybody wants to come and have a group with me and learn about the 1688 Bill of Rights and all its vocabularies and all its beauty, then all of the other things that are going on, including the Arthur Taylor case, including the Chris Farfoy case, and including this case, because there's many more things in here. You can come and ask me, and then you can all give me donations. Yeah. But if you're just going to groups, but if you're just going to groups and people are just talking about it, then you go ahead and do that. But if you're charging some money, then you should, swing some to Kate Floss's way as well, because I've worked very hard. Yeah. But anyway, let's get back. But I really like the idea of actually doing a group session with you, like picking, doing a night and saying when we're going to, and we can meet and we can all, do that together. Yeah, I think people can ask questions. It'd be nice if everybody had a printed copy and we can go over it together. Yeah, absolutely. And we really want to get this also out into Australia, into England. The people that have been deceived by the American common law scam away from their rights. I'm sorry. Although I will say it's no good getting angry at people, because a lot of people didn't know. So they are innocent and have been just trying to fight their way through these governments, and they thought that that was the correct way, but I don't think it is. But anyway, go to KII. You remember I told you about the Queen as the instrument, and you looked in the instrument of that court case that said international instruments may be used in a limited way. This is what they've got planned for us 3 years down the track. This is where they're going. So we know where they've been, but this is where they're going. KII says that they are to report to the Prime Minister the desirability of New Zealand. Now, this includes England. It includes Australia, Scotland, Ireland. It includes all Commonwealth countries, but specifically our English-speaking countries. The desirability of, it says here New Zealand, but I'm going to say Commonwealth countries, becoming bound by any international instrument on human rights. I want you to absorb that. Oh my God. Bound by any international instrument on human rights. Thousands and thousands of refugee laws giving them rights to houses, rights to health care, rights to languages that you pay for, all of these rights. They've got thousands, and all paid by you. We are being put back into the slavery that we were in under the Magna Carta, paying for all their church groups. That's another story. That's another video right there. And I'll do that later. But another one here says to promote and monitor. So this committee are monitoring our people for the compliance by New Zealand with, and the reporting by New Zealand on the implementation of international instruments on the human rights ratified by New Zealand. So all of they promised us, when we signed up to the United Nations, they said, don't worry, it's going to be non-binding. And then all these years later, they are making it binding. So they're pulling your leg. They're also, there's quite a few down there that about it, and they're to develop a national plan for the protection of the human rights. So there's just, oh, now where did I want to take you back to? So everybody knows that, all right? That's the last bit that I'm telling you. Everybody knows that they are working towards using the Treaty of Waitangi to make all of our countries, and everybody's going down, because it's no good saying Australia, I'm not signed up to the Maori. Canada, I'm not signed up to the Maori. This has already been done. All of this has already been done in Canada. They're working between countries and hopping between countries, and it's been done in Canada. They're doing it in Australia. They're doing it in England. Go and research in England. If you can find your 1688, you can barely find it. They're doing it in England. They're doing it in New Zealand. And all of the native people are under the treaty as subjects. They all are. And all of the pasty-faced people or European people, we're all under it from the original 1688. The Americans are not under it unless they're in a state that's called specifically a Commonwealth state. Because not all of the states went with the Declaration of Independence of America. Not all of them went with it. Only some. So they're going to join with us against, so they're going back to a civil war if they are listening to what I'm saying. Now, America are the ones that created all of these Charter of United Nations and all of the Indigenous rights. America were the ones that created it. And just before it was due to be signed, America wrote for the first time a separate Bill of Rights for their American Indians, so they didn't get put into the United Nations with all the 370 million refugees. So the Australian Aboriginals, the New Zealand Maori, and the Canadian Inuits, they're all in the United Nations, which they've glued on 370 million refugees, and all the rights that we always gave to our native people, all the refugees are entitled to those rights. And now they're saying that they don't even have to be in our country to get those rights. We have to take our taxes and send it to their countries for their right to their houses, their right to their education, their right to their health care, all paid by us. We're going back into slavery.
Yeah.
We're going, you can see that, can't you? So America, in the final hour, they jumped out of the pan to safety and wrote an Indigenous rights for their American Indians, which excluded all these refugees gluing onto them, and they left us naked in the jungle. They're trying to remove our 1688. Now, I just have to keep going. Can you keep going? Have you got the strength?
Yeah.
How long have we been on?
I'm not sure. What is the time? 2 hours.
Right. Where am I? What was I going to say? Can you remember? I got lost.
Just about the Americans, how they just had, with the Indigenous people written their separate
The
Bill
will,
of Rights
the will. Right. Going to talk about the will. Some people have heard me talk about the will. That 1688, when it was created, all of us got birth certificates. They had a thing called I think all this were all the biblical stuff. they used to have the exchequer Jews. They used to buy up all the pure land from the people, and then they would give them a loan on their pure land, and then they would charge huge interest. These were the first land sharks. They would charge huge interest, and then they would force the people to pay back the interest. And if the people couldn't pay back the interest, what they also used to do is send the owner of the land off to war and make sure that he got killed at war. And then his family were not allowed to claim back their pure land title. Or other times they were paying back the money, and the Jews had this deed. The Jews used to have the exchequer ledgers. They would write down in their ledger who they had lent money to and how much interest they had to pay. Well, when the people were paying back, the people couldn't read and they couldn't write. They did this to the New Zealand Maori. They couldn't read and they couldn't write and they couldn't count. So when they paid back the money, the Jews were saying, no, you didn't pay it back, and throw them off the land. So when the king found out that they were doing that, the king created a land office with a box. And he said, right, whenever you give these loans, one piece of paper is going to sit with you for your ledger, and one piece of paper is going to be in this box. And everybody would get 2 keys. 2 keys for the Jews, 2 keys for the Catholics, 2 keys for the Christians, the religious leaders, right? And so each of them got 2 keys. And land deeds, because I'm in Thailand, original land deeds, they should have a serrated edge. When they've got this serrated edge, the original one has got a serrated edge, is because they had 2 identical land deeds that were written up together, and then it was torn apart, and you knew that you could match the 2 pieces. And when the money was paid back, the people were no longer allowed to pay directly to the Jews. They were allowed to go to the land court, pay their money back, and there would be a ledger kept there. And then that person there would give the money to the Jew, and when it was paid back, the land deed would go back to the landowner, and then the original would go back into the box and could not be taken out. So that's how the land offices were created, to stop all this stuff. Now, when the 1688 was done and we got a birth certificate, every single person got a piece of land. When they got a piece of land, that was bound to their birth certificate, but that was the pure title. The pure title sat in the basket of the king, but they got given back a paper title. But their paper title, they were allowed to buy and sell with, but their pure title was never, ever, ever allowed to be sold or used for collateral for loans, and that protected their country from the banks and from other countries taking over. That's why it was created. The only people permitted to go and claim this pure title were the actual descendants of the first person on that first title. But if you claim that back, you can't buy and sell with it. So you just that's why Maori lands, they can't get loans from the bank, because if they don't pay back the loan, if they can't pay back the loan, the bank is not allowed to claim their land because it's in its pure title and it belongs to the people. So what they have to do is they put their pure title into the basket of the Queen, and the Queen gives them back a paper title. They can sell on the paper title. If they say, hey, I want that pure title back, they have to wait for a moment in time where that land comes up for sale from the land grant that they gave. If it comes up for sale, the Queen will purchase it back, and then she will go back to the native title people and negotiate to give it back to them. They still have to buy it. They don't get it back for nothing. But they only the original first person that was on that pure title, the natives, can do that. Nobody else can. This is what these common laws are trying to get you to do, to take back your pure title. Now, I'm told by a little birdie that some of the Maoris have put their, once you get your pure title, you can't do anything with it. You can't get a loan on it. You can't build a house on it. So you've got to put it in an instrument if you want to do those things. And I'm told that some of the New Zealand Maori have put their lands into the instrument of the United Nations. And that's why the United Nations is allowed to come in through them.
Oh, wow,
So
gosh.
there's a little bit more. When the 1688 was created, it was actually the will of God. That's what you can call it, the will, because we were the godly people, right? And the people that own the pure title are our godly DNA, if you could probably say that, because we are the progeny of that piece of land. And so, and then we were the godly beings of that land. And so, when the 1688 was created, it was a will to say that we will allow the Queen and all those religious leaders to carry on with their madness in their international realm that they function. They've got to build schools, right? They've got to build hospitals. They've got to build roads. They've got to, all this stuff. You don't just wake up and get all this stuff. Somebody is managing it all. And it isn't private companies. I'm telling you that. There's private companies, and then there's the higher realm that works out the things 1,000 years ahead of what they think the world's going to be like, and they make sure that everything is set up for the future generations. They're not worried about us. They're working for the future generations, right? They're going to need how many people they predict is going to be, how many of the hospitals they're going to need, how many, you know, all this has, it doesn't just spring up. Somebody's doing it. Well, so they created this will that is, they said, as long as you abide by these 26 rights, we will agree to leave our estate in your hands. And so our estate sits there, and they gave us back a paper title that we can buy and sell with as we please. And our estate stays there protected from the banks and other countries. And then that protects us for all future generations, right? Because you don't want your 1,000 years from now, your people waking up and being having no land. So that is a will. When I went to research a will, what happens if you want to have a will removed? So maybe 200 years ago, your family set up a trust for you, right? And they said, okay, we're going to give you these houses, but in order to have these houses, we're going to be making you do all these things. And then you come along and you said, hey, I don't want to have this will anymore. What they've got to do is get a majority of people that will denounce the will. So they took any education about our 1688, they took it out of our schools in the 1960s. They stopped teaching about it, and they also stopped teaching us cursive writing. They stopped teaching us about the ancient history of England and Scotland and Ireland. They stopped teaching all of that, and they started transforming our history, and we all forgot about the will. And then what they've done has, the only way you can remove a will is if you replace it with a new set of rights and a new will to carry them through for the future. So what they need is, they need to set up this is what they're doing. They're setting up a replacement for what we have by the United Nations international law. That's the replacement to replace the 16.8, and they're so slowly bringing in the United Nations instruments and exiting God's law that we ascend to make us like the Americans, where the laws don't have to ascend anymore. They don't want our laws to ascend because they have so much more power if our laws don't ascend. And if the laws don't ascend, then they are not responsible. The higher realm people are no longer responsible. We are responsible for the remedy and not them. So that's what they're doing. So in order to do that, they have flooded our countries with people that are not subjects. They've flooded every single one of our countries with thousands and thousands of Islamic people, Jewish people, and Catholic people who cannot claim their subject status. And then what they're doing is, now that court ruling that they've just made, I'm not going to read it to you now because I can't remember where it is, but he said when you have a large amount of people that support this, then they have to follow the will of the majority over the will of these few. So that's why they're flooding our country, so that in 10 years from now, they will have double the population, because they have, the Islamic people have 4 wives and 5 kids to each wife. So the Islamic people have already said, we outpopulate you in a short time. And once they outpopulate us, then we'll just be, it's going to be awful. Do you think?
Yeah, it's like eliminating, isn't it, the white person, to be honest.
We're going back into the slavery where we originally were in our pure state. They're taking us all back to our pure state, where we were naked in the jungle because we already bit the apple. You can't ever put that back. And they're translating all of their laws into English or whatever language, so that as soon as we can read that, once we can read it, then we then come under their law. We don't come under their law now because we can't read their languages. And that's why they don't want us to learn. Now, my son used to go to an Islamic school. It was a Thai school it was an Islamic Thai school. And when it came time to do the Islamic studies, my son was very clever in languages. They wouldn't allow him to participate in the learning of the Islamic language, because they only want their people learning that language. But as they bring in the new rules, they will start teaching us their language. And once we know their language, we will come under their law. So this is how it all goes, because we bite the apple. We must not bite the apple. And the New Zealand Maori, now this court document is very significant, because the New Zealand Maori are being taken back to their Te Reo language. The 1688 Bill of Rights only comes in English, one language. And if you want to be a subject, you have to be able to bite the apple and read English language. The New Zealand Maori did that. And so that's why they went to the court and declared themselves to be English speakers. They said, we don't want the Maori language anymore, because they wanted to be subjects. Because as long as they were not subject, as long as they couldn't read it, then they didn't come under the protections, because they were naked in the jungle against all the missionaries that were in their country, molesting them. So they they said, we want to have this English language to be our official language. But as you'll notice in the last 3 years, they are changing the language. That is because they're going to make Maori language the statutory language. And they're bringing in tikanga law. And tikanga law is not bound by the 1688 bill that they have to honour. And so they don't have to have parliaments and they don't have to have elections. They can have their absolute king. And so that's want everybody in New Zealand to be speaking Te Reo Maori. And they're going to make it the statutory language of New Zealand. That court document, they have set it up ready for 20 years from now when it becomes the statutory language. And he has said in there, when it's the statutory language, which case? No, not that case. In the, could be, I have to go, I have to look. I don't want to get this wrong. Now if I can find it, yes I can. Which one is this? Arthur Taylor. In the Arthur Taylor case, he said, under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, where they have attached the Maori to the United Nations, under that there must be an effective remedy. And then he set it up. He says, the importance of the rights suggests that unless granting such a remedy, he says, unless granting such a remedy is inconsistent with the statutory language. So that means that presently the statutory language is English, and the 1688 Bill of Rights is English. And so all of their rights, almost all of them, are inconsistent with our 1688 Bill of Rights. All of their religious practices, their customary practices, cutting the vagina, cutting the penises, bloodletting, marrying 6-year-old kids, all of that, they can't have it because it is prevented by our 1688 Bill of Rights, and it's prevented by our 1688 Bill of Rights because that is the statutory language of New Zealand. But here he set it up and he says we should grant the remedy for a declaration as long as it is not inconsistent with the statutory language. Now, tikanga law doesn't have the same laws as our 1688, and it doesn't have any protections against all of these religious practices. So if they bring Maori in as the statutory language, all their religious practices are going to be able to flow into New Zealand because it's not in their language. Go back to Adam biting the apple. It's not, and so then they will have all their religious freedoms. What do their religious freedoms ultimately say? That anybody that speaks against their God, that is a harm and they should be decapitated. And so this is not going to have an effect for about another 50 to 100 years. But anybody that's got children or grandchildren, this is going to have an effect to all of our people. Now, our previous people fought for 400 years to get these rights, and it's taken them 200 years to get rid of it. And that's what they're after.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the end of our session today. I didn't put up my thing for donations, but I'm going to put it up in case anyone wants to donate to me for all my hard work, just because other people are going around selling my videos and then selling it to people, which I've given it freely, but I will put it up, but I won't put it up here, but I'll put it up later. If anyone wants to make a donation to Kate Floss for my 3-hour session today, but nobody has to, and if you've already donated, then don't donate. And if you're very poor, then don't donate. So I want to give it freely, but it does involve a lot of work. So I'll just say that. And then that is the end. So do you have any questions?
No, I'll just absorb it. It's good. It's been a good session, but yeah, quite a lot to take in. And also, I need to go back and go over those things when I can get on my laptop. You know, like it's a bit hard trying to. I've looked at those things. I've looked at the New Zealand 90 Bill of Rights in 1688. So, and it's just need to absorb it. So just with
It
you're saying
takes
that this is
discussions with your friends, and
yeah.
it does take a long time and a lot of reading.
Yeah, like I mean, obviously they are going. They want a one world government. World domination. And I mean, obviously, this is where it's going. It's almost like it's unstoppable, isn't it? It's like a freight train.
No, it is stoppable, but you have all been deceived by the common law thing from America.
Right.
So now, as soon as you're not deceived, I've got the case ready to go to court, but now I have to rewrite it just a wee bit because this court ruling has just come back. And I have to go and combat all of this now. They had 15,000 police and 15,000 army. And that's what he said. He said the majority, a huge case with a huge amount of people have went forth and used the United Nations law.
Yeah.
And we've got only me to go forward and say, hey, I really want to keep these ones that we've got. So I'm thinking if we could get, a huge thing going here, we could do
absolutely.
something. Because they did it with our police and our army, for goodness sake, which is quite heinous and sneaky because they've got our police and our army that are supposed to be allegiant to our 1688, and they went against us in a court of law.
Yeah.
It's not as small as what you think, hey?
It's so corrupt.
Yeah, very. There's even more to that. We'll have to have another session, I think. I will put up my thing.
Do they know what they're doing?
Yes.
Or is it just because they do?
Yes, but that's another video. I have all the evidence of who's doing it and why they're doing it and all of that. But it's another 2-hour session and we should not do it today. But if you want to do that,
maybe we should look at getting some groups together because I know some people would be interested in learning this stuff, like with you. So
it would be so good if you can get a group. I probably would do a group of about 6 and not any more. And we would print it off and we would go over only that 1688, but you have to go over the Arthur Taylor to know all what's going on. You've got to know the Arthur Taylor cases. You've got to know the Otago law reviews. You've got to know many, many cases, and each case in itself takes about 2 hours just to show and do it correctly, So we've got a lot of work now. The Attorney General has been the New Zealand Law Council have been opposing all of this, but where they fall short is the people have not been opposing. So that's their problem, is us, because we have been deceived by Sue Gray and various others. Now, I'm not saying the human rights are not good, because I know we've got a human rights lawyer here. I'm not saying they're not good, but I'm saying that they're good in moderation, not as a dictator law to our people or our descendants.
And not to override.
Our
ancient
indubitable rights. Yeah. So we don't want them to override that. So we're going to say, we can work with you a wee bit here, but not to the point where we are preparing for our own demise.
Yes.
we're preparing for our own demise, for the extermination of our races. And so we mustn't allow that. So,
Okay.
so the attorney generals and that, they have all been fighting, but they haven't had the people behind them. And the people that have, the evil people that are doing this have been leading everyone down the human rights track, because they told everybody this was your only option, but it's not true. It is not even an option. You're never going to win on it. It's not even an option. So we better have another session to show why the court case was not won. This was all about rights, but we need to have another session about why the court case was not won. So we finish up, but hopefully you'll come back for another session. And
thank you so much. It was really good.
Thank you for coming and having someone to talk to. We will. And thank you so much for coming, because it's just so nice not to be the only one here. It's so lonely.
Yeah. So just with that, Kate, like what, because I mean, it's hard getting your head around some of this law stuff if you're not even, I mean, I'm just a normal person kind of thing. But what you say, your message does resonate with me, along the lines of finding the truth and out there in all the clouds. And I've looked at a lot of, information of the controlled opposition, as we say. And I do believe that you do have, the answer, the truth of where we need to be going if we want to stand up for our rights. So I think that's really important. And it is, as you say, educating. So what is the person that we need to bring into these groups? I mean, just someone that can, because I do like the way that you explain things as well. I think you have that really good layman's approach, to the average person, that we can understand it. But what kind of people do you feel that's going to sort of help to make a difference, or can it be just anybody, or
No, we need people who've been deeply involved in the common law movement and know all of those laws, but have realised that it was going in the wrong direction, but didn't know where to turn next.
Yeah.
So I have noticed a lot of people have been turning away from that, but then they've just said, hey, that ain't working, and then stop, and they don't know where to turn. So if anybody that has been deeply involved in the common law movement and have found that they don't seem to be getting the success that they want, to please come. But what I'm just saying to everybody presently is, if you have your birth certificate presently, you should not go and do anything with it just yet until we find out the truth. So if we could get a common law person in that knows about that, but I want to really go back and look at the difference between the American and the English. They're not the same. So that is very different. And so I'd love to have a session with someone with that knowledge and see if we can come to some kind of fusion of that, where we're going to have success in getting people out of Parliament that should not be there. And because I still haven't actually explained to you what's in that Bill of Rights. I've only explained to you what has come out of that court case and the dangers that we're in. But we still have to explain what's actually in there that protects you. So there's like 3, 4, 5 sessions need to be had. So if you could bring someone like that to come and join, and we need someone that's good on the computer. I'm not able to share the screen with the double people. So if we had a double people that could sit here and hash this out, that is prepared to show. I need people outside of New Zealand. It's too dangerous in New Zealand for people, and I don't even let people show their faces because it's just too dangerous. So we need people that are outside of New Zealand that are prepared to have their face up on camera and not have to hide behind. So that is also going to be a plus. And there have to be people that are willing, not that they have a deep knowledge of the majesty, but are willing to look at that avenue, because they've demonized the majesty deliberately to get where they want to go. And what we need them to say, we can't have people that are saying we want the majesty out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because my whole thing is about keeping the majesty in.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we need people that are saying they may have gone down
Yeah.
the road of getting the majesty out, but they might be saying now, hey, maybe I can look at this again and say, maybe it's got some things in there that we can use, and we can do that. But let's all remember that America doesn't have the majesty. Their laws don't ascend to their majesty. Their laws ascend to the federal court. Our laws ascend to the majesty. We're very different. So it's probably I don't mind having an American in here, but it's best to have an American that's in a Commonwealth state that would come. And so anybody like that, so if anybody wants to come, and if they can help me to show how to share screen on Facebook, that would be very good. All right, we better go because it's a long video.
Yeah.
But
All right. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much for all your loveliness.
Thank you so much.
See you later.
That's awesome. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.